Okay. Um, a student requested another analysis demo and had a student miss, and so this is their a class, so this is their review class, but everybody should be looking at this in Music 131. And we're just going to do another one of these because on your final you'll get several small analysis questions, probably one in major, one in minor, one with a different sort of texture than this, but the basics here that we're looking for in first term are key chord functions or the Roman numerals in the correct major and minor, appropriate for the chords, figured bass, right? We're not going to do cadences, we're not going to do that kind of thing. This is a lesser known Christmas carol, but it's still relatively known. And if you don't know this one, you should stop right now and you can go to lds.org, that's where I got this from, and click on libraries, click on music library, and then click on hymns, and they have PDFs of this you can download if you want to do the work following along. If you want to hear it, they have recordings, both instrumental and vocal with instrumental, and you should listen to it a few times or just play through it. Okay, but this is the while shepherds watch their while shepherds watch their flocks by night, all seated on the ground, the angel of the Lord came down, and glory shone around. Fear not, he said he, for mighty dread had seized their troubled mind. Glad tidings of great joy I bring to you and all mankind. I love these things are so cheery sounding, and yet they're talking about fear not and mighty dread had seized their troubled mind. There's a disconnect there aesthetically, but that's okay. It's clearly in a major key, right? And one flat, right? Probably F major, not D minor, and we just check the beginnings and ends of phrases, and especially the end of the piece, to make sure that that confirms if we're in the key of F. You're going to want an F chord, FACs, and you're going to see 5 chords, which is, if you go F, G, A, B flat, C, that's the 5th scale degree, and that will be your C chord. And if we look here, we've got an F and an A and an F and an F. It's clearly an F chord. At the end, an F, an F, an A, and an F. Another, it's missing the C, but you don't have to have that. We've talked about that before. It's like your appendix. Good to have. Not absolutely critical, right? And if we look here at the end of the line, we have a C and a C and an E and a G. This is clearly a C chord or a 5 chord. If this was in the key of D minor or some other key, then we'd find other chords that would match up with that. All right, some other considerations. Look, it's the same. And as I scan this, like I know that this pickup's different than that, but I'm going to look for similar structures because the melody is the same. Probably there's some differences either in chords or maybe just some of the ways that they've arranged the notes, right? But we're in the key of F, so I'm going to put a nice large F there to tell them in F major. I think I'm going to switch over to a darker pencil. All right. And then let's just go to town. There's the F, the F, the A. This is my 1 chord. Since it's in root position, the 5 3-figured bass is implied, right? Since this is the same, I don't need to do anything there unless this was a test that said, what's this chord, what's this chord, what's this chord, taken in isolation, okay? And, we could dive forward, but I'm going to ask you to do some things not quite so linear. We know that this is a 5 chord because we got C, E, C, and G, right? All right. Now, just some things, since we know this is a 1 chord. Let's just go along. See how the F is in the bass? We know that the root of the chord is often in the bass, sometimes the 3rd, in certain occasions the 5th of the chord is, at like cadences and in certain kinds of idioms. So we're just gonna try this non-linearly as a strategy to begin with. That's the same, looks the same as another F chord. See right here, there's an F right there, there's an F right there, and there's an F right there. We're just gonna check them out and see if they're actually F chords. F, A, F, C, that looks like a 1 chord. Again, root position, right? And then over here is another F, F, A, C, F. That looks like it's another 1 chord, right? And here's another F right here, and there's an A and a C, and 2 Fs right there. It's another 1 chord right there. So you know, I mention this because sometimes, at least at the beginning, going through linearly like this can be punishing because you have to go through all the steps of reading the notes and thinking about what scale degree that is and does it have all the notes, and there's even things like what chord likes to go to what chord and things like that. But, you know, that's pretty easy. It's just, is it the same? Is it not the same? Okay? All right. Cool. Let's go look for C's, because we know that C's are the 5-chord root, right? That doesn't mean it's always going to be a 5-chord, but it could be. Here's a C. Here's a C working in the bass. C, C, F, A. It's not a 5-chord. It's a 1-chord, F, A, C. So this is one of those special times, because this is in 5th in the bass, so 6, 4, right? That we have to say, is this really an F chord? It's sort of combined with this next one over, which is C, E, G, and a B flat. So that's my 5-chord right there. And, you know, we put these always together like this and call that all basically a 5-chord. I know we're not at a cadence, which we would bracket it there, but I do want you to think of this more like a 5-chord rather than a 1-chord. The bass line, plus being paired up with the 5-chord next to it, really makes this feel like an ornamentation. This note goes to there, that note goes to there, of what's happening in the melody and the harmonies, right? It's still a 5 in the bass. It feels like a 5. Okay. Here's another C and an E and an E and a B flat. Again, C, E flat, or sorry, C, E, G, B flat. It's missing the 5th, but there's enough there, and the bottom note tips us off. That's another 5/7 chord right there. Now, there may be other places where there's 5 chords and 1 chords because they can be inverted, but this is a great place to start. I'm just going to do this so that I don't keep wondering, am I missing something? Okay. Nice. Let's keep going. Now, there's a 1 chord right here, and there's a different chord between the 1 chord and here. Very few chords can go to the 1 chord. 5 is the most likely candidate. That would be a C, E, G, right? Or C, E, G, B flat. There's my E, right? So let's just check it out. C, C, E, G. Looks like a 5 chord. But the root is not in the bass, right? The E is in the bass. It's the 3rd. There's no 7th in this chord, so we just use for triads 6, which is shorthand for 6/3, right? That tells us that the root's right there. If we had a 3rd, that would tell us that the 3rd is the G right there. Okay? Now, this is a D. It's neither in the C chord or the F chord. We have something brand new, right? Let's check this out. Now, if you're good at scanning the whole thing, great. But D, B flat, F, and B flat. Don't forget the key signature. It's important, right? So is it a D chord, DFA? So close, but not there. Is it a B chord, BDF? It is. B flat, D, F. Now, you can do this a couple different ways. You can say, well, B flat chord is scale degree 4, so it's a 4 chord. And you could go, well, B flat, D flat, F flat's diminished, raise the 3rd, raise the 5th, it becomes major. Or you could just remember that barring accidentals, this is in the key of F and 4 chords are major, right? So you could just say, I bet it's major, right? It is. And again, root's not in the bass, 3rd's in the bass, 6, which is shorthand for 6/3, goes right there, okay? All right, moving on. 5 chord. 5 chord likes to go to 1. That's not part of the 1 chord, right? F, A, C. We also know that 5 chord can sometimes bail and go to the 6 chord, right? Or other chords too, but 6 is the most common. It's called a deceptive progression. At cadences, it's called a deceptive cadence. And D is in the bass. Let's check it out. D, D, F, A, right? If this is problematic for you to do and are going too fast, then ask yourself, is it reading the notes is the problem? Is it spelling the chords, right? You can alleviate some of these as you practice and get better by writing the note names down. Like, that helps you practice, but then also it helps you reflect rather than going, now what did I have again? And then you can work on spelling the chords. Looks like a D chord. And D, F, A is minor, which is good because 6 chords in major key are also minor. And so 6, and the root's in the bass. Okay? Here we have another E. I suspect it's like this one right here, right? Because 7 chords it could be, but the E, G, C, G, C, E, G. It's a 5 chord. There's no 7th on this, so, and the 3rd's in the bass, so there we go. And here, now I know that the melody's changing, but you know, 1, 5, 6, 1, 4, 6, 1, 5, 6, 1. Is this a 4, 6? Well, I've got my B flat and my D and my Fs. Yep, looks like a 4 chord again and again there. Now, the inner voicings are different. They often, you know, we often write music that way, but the outer voices are staying consistent. All right, cool. Let's see what we can do about doing this next row with as little work as possible. This is a new chord. It's different than this one, right? It's F, but it's harmonized with different notes. B flat's the bass. Is it just another 4 chord? And you might say, well, doesn't 5 go to 1? Usually, but we are starting a new phrase. It's kind of taking breath and starting over, and sometimes it can go to other chords. Rarely. B flat, D, F, that's my 4 chord. It's in root position. I don't require any figured bass. All right. This was a 1 chord. It's got the same melody. If it's not a 1 chord, it will be interesting. It might be like a 6 or something like that. But more often than not, the melody is the same and some of the notes are the same. It's either exactly the same or maybe they've inverted it. So F, A, C. It's my F chord. It's an inversion, right? This gives variation to the line, right? It's harder to analyze, but still, it's a nice way to give new subtleties to the same melody twice, right? I mean, you could have copied and pasted, but that would be easier for the composer, easier for us, not as much fun for the singers or the listeners, right? Okay, this was a 5 chord. Let's check this out. Is this a C chord right here? C, E, G, B flat. It is, but this one didn't have a 7th, and this one does. Now, you're going to have to do a deeper dive into your memory of figured bass. But C chord with the G is a 5, and the 5th is in the bass. Normally, it would be 6, 4, right? But because it's got a 7th on it, there's a different, oh, that's a nasty eraser. There's a different figured bass we use, which will be 4, 3. It's like 6, 4, but that's my root, and there's my 7th right there. And then we get lazy in the shorthand and drop that out. So 5, 4, 3 is 5 chord with a 7th on it, but the 5th's in the bass. If this was, oh no, I've forgotten that. It's a signal to you to go back and study those before we get to our unit tests and finals and things, okay? This was an F chord. It looks exactly the same. So, you know, you might say, is that cheating? No, it's great. You have this information, it's there. Is it cheating that you're doing analysis with your teacher instead of on your own? It's a building step. It's also more fun, right? It's nice to have these to check against. Here, this is exactly the same as that. It's a 4 chord, and the 3rd's in the bass, right? This and this are exactly, they're all the same. Nice. 1, 6, 4, 5, 7. You know, if you really feel guilty about this, you can, you know, print a new one of these things out and do it again on your own. 5 goes to 6. This is a 5, 7. Let's check this out. This looks similar. That looks similar. That looks similar. And that looks similar. And that looks similar. Hooray. It's very common, actually, to have it be partially repeated if the melody is the same twice, right? And so the beginnings will be harmonized a little differently or voiced differently, but then, you know, we run with the cadence the same way at the end of the line. Or sometimes this will end on a 5 chord, which feels unfinished, and this will be ending on a 1 chord, and so this will have to get reworked a little bit. So the beginnings will be the same, but the ends are different. The point is there's similarities because we like repetition, we like regularity with some variation. All right. Fear not, he, said he, for mighty dread has seized their troubled mind, right? So la fa fa, la so mi, so fa mi re do ti. Well, I'm looking for chord structures, and I'm gonna, you know, cheat by doing edges, right? This is F, A, F, C. I mean, I see that, and I kind of go like Blanc on the piano. I go, this is the F chord, right? 1 chord. Also, this here, so fa mi re do ti. Ti is not part of the do. Mi so mi do. It's so ti re ti. So it's part of my 5 chord. C, C, E, right? There we go. Nice. Shall we cheat a little further? Down here, expect it to end on a 1, F, F, A, C. It's 1 chord, right? Okay. I would ignore these. They do seem transient, right? I think these are non-chord tones, and I think this is just the inversion, but they're happening so quickly. I'm not going to call like a 1/6 right there. If you're really like hyper dialed into figured bass for an exercise, you could, but that's okay, right? Okay, so D is not part of the fear not, da-na-na-na. This is not part of the 1 chord, FAC, and not part of the 5 chords, C, E, G, or B flat. There's a B flat in the bass. This looks like my 4 chord, right? B flat, D, F, right? And then this looks like also the same thing. They've just switched pitches coming down, right? And then dropped the octave. So it's still a 4 chord. And then this is still a 4 chord right there. And this is still a 4 chord right there. That's fantastic. That gives me great confidence since this sounds like this. Da na 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 na. That this could all be a single chord as well, right? Like it's a similar music idea. It's different pitches because it's harmonizing a different chord. But if this stayed static, good chance a lot of this stays static as well, right? So let's check it out. A, that's weird. That would be a 3 chord. A, C, E. Well, A's and C's, but the F is not part of that. Is it a 1 chord? F, A, C, right? 1 chord. It's got a first inversion, right? Now here, it's in root position, and this is where you would just write 5-3 instead of writing a 1 with nothing, right? Because it's still obviously a 1 chord. You haven't changed that, but then it tells us about the inversion. And then here, F is still there. That's fine. And then here, F, A, C. These are all F chords, but now we're back to that, right? Because third's in the bass. Sweet. Okay. And look, my B flat. Is this another B flat chord? B flat, D, F. Yeah, it's my 4 chord. Is this C going to be a 5 chord? Let's check it out. C, F. Nope. F, A, C. This is a 1 chord in second inversion. F, A, C's, right? And then this is a 5 chord right here. This is a C, E, G, right? It's probably not a 7 chord. You look for that right there. And that's a 5/6 as well. And you might say like, well, what do we do with this? It's, you know, do we put it under and go bracket? No, in this case, actually, it has a different designation. Remember how I said usually there's roots, sometimes there's thirds, and then there's fifths in the bass that have specific ways that they're used. This is one that we haven't talked about. We won't learn until next term, but it's okay, right? It's coming up. And then here, oh, look at that. See right there, that's one of those things where we say it's not in the key anymore. It looks like it's part of a chord. And we're going to do what I always recommend to do. You put it in a bottle, you take it back to the lab, and you ask somebody about it later. We're just going to ignore that. You have my permission at this point in your analysis career to say, oh, it's not part of the key. It's alien. Let's not deal with it right now. Let's not get sidetracked. I'll explain it again in the end. It has to do with making yourself in the key of 5 momentarily, but we're going to go on to the last line here. So after 5, we like a 1, even though we had a 4 here. Let's just check this out. There's my A. It's probably not an ACE chord. In fact, it's probably just an FAC chord. FAC, 1/6, right? This is my B flats right there, right? B flats. That's my B flat D F chord. That's my 4 chord. This is an interesting one. Is it still a B flat chord? Let's check out all my notes. B flat, G, C, E flat. None of those work. So you have to spin this around. Now, maybe you've already got that this is a C chord, but B flat, G, right? C, E flat. It's possible one of them is just a non-chord tone, like the melody note there, right? Or sorry, not E flat, just plain old E, sorry. E natural. But let's just try it out. B flat, D, F, no. G, B, D, no. C, E, G, well, yes, C, E, G. And then B flat would be the 7th. We have a 5 chord here. Now, do you remember the figured bass for when the 7th is in the bass? It's just 2. Tells you that a second above there is the root of the chord. Some books will make you go 4/2, right? The full of it is 6/4/2, but the shorthand you can do is just a 2. So 5/2. And 7th likes to go down to the 3rd of the 1 chord. F, A, F, C. It's an FAC. It's a 1 chord. It's in first inversion. Hopefully these are just starting to become automatic to you now. I don't have to keep saying them. And then we have a C and an E and a G and a G. It's another C chord, right? But the G is in the bass. So now it's a 6/4. There's no seventh anywhere, so it's just plain old 6/4 instead of 4/3. And then this is another one of those ones where you go like, what is that for? It's one of those ones we'll talk about later. They're called passing chords because the bass line looks like a melodic passing note jumping through two stable chords. This is the unstable chord here. This is going 1/6 down to a 1 chord right here. And it's got a nice unstable but connecting passing note-like structure that is harmonized with the 5. They're called passing chords. Don't worry about that right now. Okay, here we have C, E, G, right? It's like not a G chord, G, B, D. It's got a G and a B, but no D. It's an E chord, E, G, B, E, G, B, maybe. Let's talk about that for a minute. E, G, B flat. That's possible. Could be a 7 chord, but then we still have to make sense of that. It's not transient, it's structural, it's sitting there the whole time. And so if we tuck this in here, it becomes the 5/7. And this should be a chord we're looking for because of all the chords in a hymn like this, you know, at the beginning, you're going to find with a 7th on it, the 5 chords are going to be there. And we've seen a lot of them already, right there and up there and stuff. So this is a C, E, G, B flat chord. Okay, so it's a 5 chord. It's got a 7th on it and the 5th is in the bass. Do you remember? 4/3, not 6/4/3. Sorry, not 6/4 because that's the triad, but 6/4/3. But we leave because there's my 7th, but we leave the 6 off because it's shorthand. Okay, and 5 likes to go to 1. Here's my 1 chord, F, A, C, and C. It's my 1 chord. And this is another one of those ones where it's like a passing chord, right? It's got the 1 and the 1 with this passing down, and a 1 and a 1 with these passing down. Later, when we talk about second inversion chords a lot in class, we'll learn to bracket them and call them passing chords. Okay? For right now, just call it a 5/6/4 and a 5/4/3. Oh, B flat in the bass, B flat, D, F. It's my 4 chord. Back again. All right. Got C's all the way across, right? This means it's going to be a C chord. However, it's an idiom, a thing that we do all the time where we take my 5 chord right here. See this 5 chord? 5 right there. And this is my 5 chord with a 7th right there, right? And we back it up with an ornamentation of the 1 chord, F, A, C. But it's in first inversion. And I'm just going to do this here. I know that it's like it's redundant, but you put it all under here. We're at a cadence point. You say, that's all my 5 chord. It's just ornamented like that. Okay? So, again, if you struggle with your figured bass, you don't get much better by doing analysis struggling with figured bass. You just sit down with some flashcards and some paper, and you just slog those out until they're memorized, and then you're much better at this. If you're having problems with scale degrees and knowing what the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chord, tonic, supertonic, median, subdominant, dominant, that kind of thing, you need to sit down with that separately and work on that a little bit. Or you could simply just go F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, and I go like 1 chord, 2 chord, 3 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, 6 chord, and 7 chord. However, I would only do this on a test. Like it's fine to do, but you really want to do the work to memorize that, right? I mean, all goes back to even if you struggle with reading a clef of music, right? Like if you struggle with bass clef, if you're still sitting there going, now, how do I get that note? I climb from here and I do this thing to convert it, stuff like that. You just need to spend, 20, 30, maybe even up to an hour's worth of minutes just practicing those things. It's so worthwhile. It makes everything else work. If something about this is a struggle, right, then you just identify the part or component that's bad. If your car doesn't run well, you don't have to replace everything. You just got to figure out if it's bad fuel, spark plugs, I don't know, timing of the engine. There's things, and you as a student get to self-diagnose a little bit though, right? You're like, oh, battery's dead. That's why it's not turning over. It's turning over, but it's not starting up. Maybe your spark plugs are fouled. Maybe you're not getting fuel, which could be dirty gas. It could be fuel pumps not working. It could be, different things, right? But just work on that thing. You replace that thing, it's probably going to be fine, right? Okay. Hope that helps. We're going to stop with just this one right here now. We said we'd come back to it. when you see a note that's not in the key because of an accidental, it could be because you're in minor and you've raised the seventh note back up for the harmonic minor scale to give yourself major fives, dominant fives, diminished sevens. That's not the case here, right? We're in a major key. And so the most common thing that it is that you have a chord coming up that you are tonicizing or pretending is the 1 chord. And you back it up with its 5 chord, or even a small section that looks like in its key. It's a temporary thing, right? So let's take a look at this. This is my C chord right there, right? And if I'm in the key of C, then I wouldn't have a B flat, I'd have a B natural. That's a good sign. This is going T-do right there, like that. So I expect that if this is acting like my 1 chord in the key of C, that this is probably my 5 chord in the key of C. And let's just check that out. That would be a G chord, right? G, B, D, F. Totally is. G, B, D, F. Okay, so that's a, and it's got the 5th in the bass and there's a 7th there. So it's a 5, 4, 3. It's a figured bass. And we denote that it's in this key by temporarily by going of 5. That's the beginning of 2nd year. We work on those a lot. Okay? It's a temporary little bubble. Gives the 5 chord some pull, right? Some flavor and some importance by announcing it with a modified other chord. Like G is the 2 chord in the key of F, but it's been modified. It's been given super soldier serum or something like that, and it's doing a different job right now. And then it's like, oh, we're done. We go back to the key. It's temporary. All right, good. I'll put up another video about rhythm and meter and stuff like that too. But in the meantime, hopefully that was useful and helpful and encouraging.